Special thanks to our podcast sponsors, Brigitte and Bashar Kalai, Hallie Vanderheider, and Sippy and AJ Karana.
At Crime Stoppers of Houston, we believe in safety for all, and to achieve that, it's necessary to have balanced conversations where all are represented. Here's where we come together to do just that. Welcome to The Balanced Voice.
Today, you are in for a special joy-filled treat. I'm Sydney Zuiker. I'm the executive producer here at the Balanced Voice podcast, and we have saved this particular conversation for this exact day in history. In a year with a high-stakes election where racial tensions are high and there's calls to defund the police, oh, and let's not forget about the global pandemic we're all living through, we feel as if everyone is simply exhausted. While we sat in our recording session with Dr. Jason Campbell, also known as the TikTok Doc, and our dear friend Joy Sewing, our team was left hanging on their every word. Both Joy and Dr. Campbell have an incredible life mission to spread joy in all that they do, and that was absolutely apparent in this conversation. We covered some really difficult topics like being poor and Black in America. But when Dr. Campbell said, the thing that will make change actually occur are the conversations that are had when Black people aren't around, it was as if we were all given permission to be hopeful for our future, to be hopeful that we can actually make a difference in our nation. Today, the day after Election Day, we hope that you will take a breath, laugh a little, find some joy in your life, and listen to our incredible conversation with Joy Sewing and Dr. Campbell. Without further ado, here's your host, Rania Mankarios.
Welcome to the Balanced Voice podcast. I am so excited for today's discussion. We are thrilled to have Dr. Jason Campbell, also known as the TikTok Doc, who, by the way, we're supposed to do a dance together with. I'm still waiting for that. Okay, that's got to happen.
Yeah.
You're like, no, it's not going to happen. You can follow Dr. Campbell on Instagram at drjc of the DC, and of course on TikTok. And you can also go to his blog, jcofthedc.blog. Dr. Jason Campbell is a resident physician in anesthesiology and perioperative medicine at the Oregon Health and Science University in Portland. He spreads his joy, as we said, with popular TikTok dances, including his co-workers, in an uplifting manner. And his goal is to just share joy and happiness and uplifting messages with the world. We also have Houston's one and only, one of my absolute favorites, a volunteer contributor to the podcast, Joy Sewing. Everybody here knows her. She's our lifestyle and culture columnist at the Houston Chronicle. She's author of Ava and the Prince, The Adventures of Two Rescue Pups. She is founder of the Year of Joy, a nonprofit organization that spreads joy to children from undeserved communities, and host of the Joy Hour. She is very busy. So welcome, both of you. We're so happy to have you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Rania.
Yeah, thank you for having us. Very excited to be here.
Okay, so both of you have decided to use your talents to pour joy and well-being into your respective communities. And so I'm really, really interested, Dr. Campbell, we can start with you. One day, you're in the hospital, and this is pre-COVID. Was this pre-COVID? It was, right?
It was, yeah. A few weeks before COVID hit, absolutely.
And you're pulling your colleagues together who are not, physicians, God bless you. I love you all. My husband's an anesthesiologist. You guys are not necessarily known for dancing, but you're pulling everybody together and you're launching these TikTok videos that literally took off. I mean, they just took off.
Yeah, thank you for that memory, that walk down memory lane. And as you mentioned, it started with a donation, or I should say a challenge from one of our colleagues at the University of Michigan, who said, hey, if you get such and such to do a dance with you, I'm going to donate to this research organization that's very big in the anesthesia world. And so that's where it started. It just started as a feel-good moment, as a chance to get people that aren't known to dance to bust a move. And a few moves later, a few videos later, here we are.
Were you surprised by the response?
Oh, absolutely. I've never gone viral. You joke about it, oh, this is going to go viral or whatever. But I was incredibly humbled and surprised by the response and the responses that continue to come in.
And Joy, you have spent a long time, you've been doing this for a while, where your goal is to pour joy into the community. You've through the kids that you work with, through your charitable organization, through your writings, through so many different things. What led you to do that?
Oh, wow. Well, I think a couple years ago, I was, in my time in my life where I was feeling overworked, underpaid, and a little. I know you're happy, baby. I'm sorry. All right. Bye. So sorry.
No, it's life.
This is life at home. I know. He goes around saying, I'm happy. And I think that's wonderful.
That's the best.
Keep that in there.
Your child. I love it.
I started to, I actually read Shonda Rhimes' book, Year of Yes. And she is the woman behind How to Get Away with Murder, Grey's Anatomy. And she was talking about how she was trying to find joy in her life. And I just thought, wow, for a woman this powerful who was asking those questions, it made me kind of look at my own life. And I just set out to bring myself joy, little bitty things. And it turned into celebrating joy with children. And that's the best feeling in the world, is to be able to make them smile, give them a moment of happiness. So many children don't have the opportunity to have joy in their lives. And that was really my whole mission.
And you've done so much serving. You've identified this pocket of young girls that you felt needed life poured into them, an opportunity poured into them. And you've done so many different things to pour into these girls. Talk to us about your nonprofit organization and your goal and mission for it.
So the Year of Joy is just that, an opportunity to spread joy throughout communities that are underserved in Houston. And so I started with, I'm a former competitive ice skater and coach. And so I hosted my first Year of Joy holiday ice skating party at Discovery Green here in Houston. And we had 40 girls for that particular one. And that was 4 years ago. And this past December, we had 200 kids, boys and girls from all throughout Houston. And people donate buses and gifts, and we have performers who are African-American students who are studying skating here. And the mayor came out, and we had Santa Claus on ice, and it was just a wonderful experience for these children. And then throughout the year, I do little small quarterly events with just girls, 20, 25 girls, mindfulness retreats, etiquette classes, all kinds of things like that. But COVID has put a damper in everything. So I don't know what we're going to do this year.
I feel like COVID's made everybody pause, except for people like you, Dr. Campbell, who've been working around the clock. And, when you and I spoke originally, we've done an Instagram live together, which was so fun. And incidentally, my dad was watching from Boston, and he's like, something about it. I was crying the whole time. I'm like, I get it. But you had said in our interview that part of the reason, you took to TikTok and you went to make these videos is because you wanted to reach the younger generation. And I feel like you said, you were hoping to reach young Black American boys just like you, growing up in this world, and putting together a face and an image of a young doctor, somebody that's working in different fields that you felt like they weren't getting enough, they didn't have enough role models for.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, incredibly well put. And I'm honestly amazed just listening to Miss Joy talk, and the way that she is inspiring young African-American girls is what my goal has always been with young African-American boys. And I had a lot of great mentors and role models in my life, and I've seen that that's not everyone's case and everyone's story. And so to be able to represent and be there for others, and my motto, I told you this before, it's, take your job seriously, but you don't have to take yourself too seriously. And so that's always been what I've been about. And I know that smiling and a few laughs are good for the soul and are just as important sometimes as the medicine that we provide our patients.
You said in an interview, we've got to get through this with physical health, with mental health, and dancing will do that. You went on to say, I've always loved to dance. I've always felt like it was a great way to communicate with people, a great way to get people from all different walks of life to join and come together. And I think you've seen that in the response. Janet Jackson, I think, reshared one of your dances on National
National Doctors Day. Yeah, that was a highlight of my life, obviously.
That's a highlight in anybody's life.
Yeah,
So
it's like medical degree, Janet Jackson.
Janet Jackson, in that order? In that order.
Yeah, certainly.
So have people, I know that a lot of people, people are reaching out to you. You've mentioned it, that they want to do a dance with you and they want to be a part of this incredible movement that you created. You were just recognized at the VMAs, and we'll talk about that in a second. But have you felt that you've also, let's realize that 2020, Joy mentioned it, is a year, with COVID, it's a year unlike any other year we can think of, because you've had COVID, you've had George Floyd's death, you've had the defund the police movement, you've had this whole discussion about racism in America. So it's put both of you in a really unique position to really have very important conversations. I'm curious, Dr. Campbell, have more people been reaching out to you, young men, young women who are intrigued by your story and what your work is?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that it's all about balance. And so for me, I was actually just recently in Minnesota for a wedding, but I had to take a day to go visit the George Floyd Memorial and to make sure that I'm still practicing what I preach and really being about it, And so it was very sombering walking around that memorial. It's beautiful. If you haven't had a chance to go, I suggest that everybody goes once COVID is over, once traveling feels safe to you. And it's just a chance to see what the power of images, the power of art, and what we have to battle and work for and work towards still in America today. And so that's what I'm about, and I think Miss Joy. And so I've got a lot of people reaching out, and it just realizes that the journey and this fight for equality, for equity, especially from a racial standpoint, is not over, and it's really just getting started.
Joy, I've known you for so long, and I didn't realize that you were on a team of U.S. journalists who went to Cuba to actually study and look at racism.
Yeah, that was one of the highlights of my career, was being able to do that. So a lot of people don't know that I am very interested in the travel of African people throughout the diaspora, which means from Africa throughout Latin America. I lived in Mexico. I studied racism there, and I happened to be able to go to Cuba. And one thing when traveling the world, you see that racism is an issue everywhere. It's not. It's very, very much an issue here. But other communities, other countries are experiencing the same type of oppression for people of color who are even in an island of people of color. The darker you are, the more you're oppressed, and that's so disheartening. But I think when we educate ourselves, we can help bring about change.
We had a recent conversation with someone in Houston who I respect and admire very much, and he said something it still sits with me, because racism is something we always hear about, and I think we all talk about, but we've never, in my opinion, looked at it the way we're looking at it right now. And I am one of those that said, but we had, Barack Obama was our president. In Houston, we have most of our elected officials represent people of many different ethnicities and colors and walks of life. I feel like America has taken hundreds of years for it. We've taken steps that are just unbelievable. And this gentleman said to me, and I even used the example that, my parents are, Arabic immigrants, and they came here with nothing. My father worked any job he could find when he came to the States and ended up retiring, having 11 patents under his name. So I feel like America is a place where anyone can do anything, regardless of race, gender, creed, et cetera. And he said, except for, and he's an African-American man, very well respected in our community. He said, but except for people of color. And I said, but I don't understand why. And he said, because the whole system is working for you not to succeed. And I'm grappling with that so much, because I don't know that I agree, but I don't know enough to disagree. And I look at you two, very successful, loved and admired locally, nationally, and everywhere in between. What is your take on his definition of being a person of color in this country?
I totally agree with him. And I think, what people get jaded when they see someone like me and Jason, and think that you didn't have any hardship, you didn't have any oppression, you weren't discriminated against, and that's so far from the truth. You know, being a Black woman in this country, we're the lowest paid across the board. And so to deal with issues like that, and I continue to, and just having your voice be heard and not be under the stereotype of angry Black woman. And just, I think that systemic racism is alive and well. And I think people, it's having a hard time understanding that. I just did a story about why it's difficult to talk about Kamala Harris's multiracial identity. And I got some people who were really open, who emailed me, who said, you know, I don't know enough about this, but I'm willing to be open and learn about this. Some people said, well, how dare I do that? And that it has nothing to do with anything, and that she's not Black. And the thing about it is that she has been raised and as a Black woman and understands that. And I interviewed a professor at University of Houston, and he said there is definitely a caste system on race here in this country, with Black people being at the bottom of the caste system, in terms of respect, in terms of opportunities and everything. So I think what you see are people who are rising up in spite of oppression, in spite of these things. They are really working extra hard to rise above, and not everybody can do that. Not everybody has that support system. I had tremendous parents and a support system, but not everybody has that. So I totally agree with him.
Dr. Campbell.
Yeah. Yes, I mean, the system is certainly not set up to support us. And I think that, you know, as Ms. Joy noted, I also had tremendous parents, tremendous support. And, you know, in this world, to be poor and Black is, I mean, it is horrific, the hurdles and adversity. And I mean, and I'm a physician, I can still have things occur to me through policing or other avenues that I have to navigate. And then I'm like, oh, but you know, I went to Emory University and Georgetown University and the Ohio State University College of Medicine, and like, oh, we got the wrong guy. But that's after the fact, right? But I mean, to be poor and Black in America is, I mean, the stories I hear from the brothers that look like me that are in a different socioeconomic class are hard to stomach, because we do look alike. We do share the same beliefs around many things, but the system is broken, and if you're poor and Black, the system is really broken against you.
Can I add something, Rania, as well? And because I'm talking with a physician here, one thing that is really apparent is, you know, just how we are treated in the system when we go out dealing with COVID, and many Black people who are going into hospital situations and not being taken seriously because of their symptoms. They're not being dealt with in terms of their pain threshold. They're assumed to be not in pain when they are, and that kind of health disparity has been very apparent during this time. I've been on a number of panels with other Black journalists talking about how African Americans have been treated during this whole pandemic, and maybe Jason, you can speak on that, but that's a whole nother, and that has nothing to really do with economics. But when I go into a medical environment, I'm always cautious of whether they're going to take my symptoms seriously, because I'm Black, and that has happened before. So.
Yeah, no, thank you for bringing that up. My mother, this is her main study, her main focus of study is the idea that health disparities has not only obviously been incredibly damaging to us before COVID, and then COVID has obviously illuminated an incredible issue. And so you don't need to be treated by a Black doctor to be treated fairly, but you certainly need Black doctors to work at the hospitals where you're being treated, so that people can have an understanding that what you're saying is true, what you're saying has validity. And so this is why we push for more African-American physicians, both men and women, and to understand that does save lives. And sometimes people have a hard time going from, how are you telling me that more Black physicians saves lives? And we're saying, hey, connect the dots. See that increasing the conversation. Obviously, we know there's some diseases, including COVID-19, that disproportionately affect certain races. And so inevitably, you know, I hope that Houston, obviously one of the major diverse meccas in America, that those institutions, Baylor, MD Anderson, that they're doing what they need to do to be more aware of the facts and more aware of listening to their patients, regardless of the skin tone and the race. And we know that the mask, that doesn't help, right? You know, that you being here, that unfortunately I feel hurts us even more. And so it's a tough situation right now.
So many things are kind of popping into my head, and I want to try to cover as many of them as we can. I mean, there's so many different issues. So there's the fact that racism exists. There's the fact that, you know, there are people who have enough of a support system to overcome it. There's the reality that there are people that do not. And many of us are coming from different walks of lives, and we're all trying to piece this together and live together. I feel like we are so fractioned as a country right now that we can't even have balanced conversations about possible solutions. And part of the goal of this podcast is to create ways to do that. I mean, you guys are reaching so many people through positivity, but you're also willing to have really difficult conversations. Do you feel like there's hope for where we're going right now, the direction of the narrative, the types of conversation, even if they're difficult and they hurt and they're uncomfortable?
I can start. You know, I don't know. Honestly, I mean, the joyful side of me wants to believe that we are at a breaking point and we are moving toward positivity. There's another side of me that says, you know, when I see some of the comments that I receive on articles, or when I read things in the paper, or, you know, I see what's happening out in the street to Black men, I don't know. It's a very hard subject to talk with a lot of people. People tend to be very sensitive. But I also think there are a lot of people who are showing themselves to be open. What we've seen now, especially with the protests around the country, is that this is not just Black people protesting in the street. You're seeing a large, in Portland, it's mostly white people out there. So I think you have people who are very on all sides of the spectrum, who are very interested in having these conversations and bringing about change. I just don't know how soon that will happen, or if it will happen in my lifetime.
Yeah, my grandma's 97 years old, still alive. She got her hair did yesterday, and then so I knew you like that. So she's still very with it, and I mean, obviously she's seeing stuff on TV that she lived back in the 1930s. I mean, so if that doesn't shake you a little bit, I don't know what will. But I'm an optimistic guy. I'm a realistic guy. I think that I'm leaning like you. I'm leaning into those that are open and letting that carry me and carry us forward. Because some people that are really open now are more than just open. They're willing to fight with us for change, for your son, for me, for us. And so I think that that's such an important point, that we're leaning with those advocates, because ideally that will hopefully extinguish the flames of the hate and the true anti-Black persons that we know are in Oregon, are in states across this country. So, I mean, I'm just optimistically but realistically leaning on what we can do, and hoping that those like us have the power to really keep pushing that effort forward.
So, I mean, Jason, you're in Portland. I mean, what is it like there, and what are your thoughts on the riots and all of it that's going on?
Sure. Well, I had to first, at least say that, support with all the fires. So we have fires both literally and figuratively. And right now we have poor Oregon fires that are going on. So I hope everybody's staying safe in that sense. But as far as the riots, I think that the movement, the riots, both nonviolent and violent, I think there's a lot of mixed messaging. When I was out protesting, probably now a month ago, a lot of wonderful persons of all different races standing alongside me, walking, through the streets of Portland, protesting for our voice to be heard. But now there's a lot of violence, and I don't know that violence is connected to the movement. And I'm not here to speak to whether you can have violent or nonviolent protests. I think there's time for both. My grandma said something very interesting. She said, Jason, she said back in the 1960s when Martin Luther King Jr. was assassinated, there were riots in DC, as some will remember. When those riots occurred, people were tearing up stores in downtown Washington, DC, because like you said, those stores were owned by the white folks. So it was Blacks lashing out at what they thought was, really their hero taken away, and the fact that the movement would no longer go forward, or what stagnation would result. Now, when you have Black store owners and their stores are getting vandalized, how do we kind of sit with that? I'd love to hear Ms. Joy's take on this, but I'll say that with Portland and with Oregon, it's just been kind of, I think, mixed messaging. And similar when I was in Minnesota, people cannot get past the violence and the looting. People will completely forget what the original issue was and just literally focus on that. And then wait, and then they'll talk to me as if I'm a different Black guy because I smile and because I'm, a physician. And so it is fascinating.
Yeah. Because you're articulate.
Right. Thank you, sister. Thank you. I appreciate you.
Yeah. Joy, I don't know if you have thoughts on that, but I mean, I do, but I want to know what you think.
I agree that people are people who want to believe that racism is not a big issue, that Black people need to get over it, that, that was then, this is now. A lot of them will focus on the violence part of what's happening in the world in these protests, and not see what the protest is for. And this is, and the protest really is, it's just to be human in this world, to be able to have a voice, to speak out, to be, to live a equal and fair life. That's what this is about. But people do, go ahead.
But I agree with some of what, and Jason, I keep going between Dr. Campbell and Jason, and I'm sorry.
Yes,
do it. There you go.
We're like family, Jason.
Yeah.
I agree. I see what some of Jason's saying, and this is where I see some friction. It's that we've lost some of the messaging behind the riots and the looting and the protests that have become violent. And we spoke to an African-American former retired LAPD sergeant, and she said, I am literally told that I'm turning my back on our culture because I wear a uniform. And she said, and I don't understand why, where did it say that culturally as a Black woman, I can't be for law and order? Where does it say that? Or, Dr. Campbell, Jason, can you not be, I don't understand it. And
people are, poor and Black, their interactions with police officers, from what I am learning, because I'm not, have been told from those that are close to me and some that are not so close to me, have been just horrific. So I have people that say, I've never had a good experience or interaction with a cop. That's not my take. I have had interactions with cops that have been very helpful, protecting like they're supposed to. So I can't, but the race, it feels that's very fractured. And that's unfortunate, because I know a lot of people that do have family members that are law enforcement, whether that's, FBI, police, Secret Service, all along those lines. And so to say that, that individual is a bad person, and they're like, oh, no, not that person, the system. But then individuals are told stuff like this, and you're like, but look, how are you separating the two?
Can I say something? I think, and this is what happens when people have been dogged so badly by an institution that's set up to protect them. Historically, you can go back to the formation of police in this country, and Black people have never been at the forefront of being protected and kept safe in this country. So I do think that there is a right for a lot of people to feel a fear of police. And I think it's hard for them. It puts up a blinder of seeing it, of seeing if there are any other good police in the system. Does that make sense? And I just think that, it's been fractured, and it's been for so long that it's right now we're having a hard time trying to piece it together. And there's going to have to be a lot of openness on both sides, on police and everyday people, to kind of come together to form a bridge, because it's been fractured for so long. And what we're seeing now is a huge fallout that has been building for decades upon decades upon decades.
Yes, so eloquently put. And I mean, to add to that, I saw this on Twitter. I know, Ronnie, you're there too. Derek might take this out, but can you imagine someone said, if you called the firefighters to put out a fire and they came and beat you up? And yes, that is a hyperbole, but do we not just see that with someone calling and then he ended up getting shot? So I think that you have to understand, like Ms. Joy just said, like there is a history here that finally people are like, enough's enough. And then other people are like, whoa, that's pretty extreme. And it's like, if you knew that, you know, my grandmother or grandfather had this happen to them, and then my parents had this happen to them, and then I'm dealing with this, you wouldn't say that this is too much if that was your family, if that was your lived experience.
Sure.
I think, go ahead, Joy.
It's interesting. So, you know, my parents, even though we didn't grow up poor, my parents sat down and had this conversation with us about how you interact with police, and especially with my brother, and how you will be perceived. And my brother was in his probably mid-20s when he told us how many times he had been pulled over by the cops, and how many. There was one particular time where he drove like an old fancy car and had and it was diesel, and had probably 50 cents in his pocket, and a cop pulled him over at nighttime, and he was scared to death that he was going to lose his life. So you know, this is across the board. It's not, you know, I think this and I think now people are talking about these talks that Black parents have with their kids about the world and how they will be perceived. And it's a talk that I will have with my son, especially even now, that I will have that talk with my son about how the world will perceive him. I'm hoping it will be better by the time he is grown. But I'm
curious though, Joy, do you feel like if we see a gradual, you know, shift in culture of society where your physician is Dr. Campbell, your mayor is Sylvester Turner, our mayor, the Houston mayor, very well respected African-American man. If you're seeing your lawyer, your main columnist that every person in Houston wants to have write about them, Joy Sewing. I mean, do you think organically culture will change, or that's not enough?
I mean, I don't think it's enough. I mean, I think we have a number of Black leaders who are doing amazing things, and you see them at the forefront. We had a Black president, and 8 years. So, and look at where we are now. And it feels like racism is coming out of the woodworks. But here's the thing: is that it's always been here. It's always been here. And I think we're at a what do they call it? A tipping point. That now we're seeing it. We also have iPhones and video. So it makes it a lot more apparent for people to talk about it, for people to show it. And that keeps it in the forefront. Whereas before it was behind, it was something happened, no one really saw, so no one really knows if that was actually what happened. Now we know it was what happened, you know?
Right. And like you said, we had a Black president, and I would feel like some of the race things always here, but like cicadas have emerged since that time. And so that's what shows you, like, you know, they will do whatever they can to remind us of what our place should be, or what they suspect or think our place should be. And, you know, the most important thing that will make change actually occur are the conversations that are had when Blacks aren't around. What are the conversations that majority whites are having? And those that are saying that they're standing up for us, are they actually standing up for us and standing with us? That's where we're going to actually see that anti-racist movement come to fruition.
Yeah, I agree.
On that note, I know that we've taken so much of your time, but when we launched the podcast, I jotted it down on paper to have you two together. And I'm so glad that we were able to make it happen. We thank you so much for your time, for all that you're contributing to the communities that you represent. We wish you guys health and safety always, and look forward to seeing you again very soon. Thank you again for being with us.
Thanks, Rania. Thanks, Jason.
Thanks, Rania. Thank you so much. Thanks, Ms. Joy. Pleasure.
Nice to meet you.
Hey, nice to meet you as well.
Hi, guys. Thank you. If you missed anything from the show, check out the show notes at thebalancedvoicepodcast.com. This episode was edited and mixed by the team at Real News PR. Our executive producer is Sydney Zuiker. Our advising producer is Katie Meyers. Our media and quality assurance director is Tanya Cruz. And finally, our creative design director is Elizabeth McChesney. To find out more information about Crime Stoppers of Houston or to get involved with our prevention programming, please visit us at crime-stoppers.org. You can find us on Instagram at The Balanced Voice Podcast, and you can find me online at The Rania Report.